What's up guys, Shawnthebro here. Today we're going to be doing the Unreal fighting game tutorial on combos. So in this case, what a combo refers to is on a hit, you can activate another move earlier than you would be able to. Okay, so we will be doing input combos, or like command list inputs, meaning like quarter circle forward and all that, in the next episode or in one of the sooner upcoming episodes, but this is specifically for chaining moves together based on hit. So you'll see if I'm mashing the button, and you can hear me because I have an obnoxious mechanical keyboard that I love. I have to wait until it is done to actually trigger it, but if I am to make contact, I can trigger it right away. You see that? And it might be easier for you to tell once you end up actually implementing it. But there you go. So that's how that works. So let's go ahead and get into it. Let's start with the code as we usually do. There's not much this time around, but you know, obviously we got to go through it. So if you're not familiar with the fighting game tutorial and you're just here for combos, then great. You shouldn't necessarily need anything that we've already done to implement it, but you will need to obviously have attacks implemented. I will put up when we did attacks in the fighting game tutorial here in the icon in the top right. But if you don't need that, then let's continue. So the only thing I added this time around to the code was has landed hit, a boolean that we can access in blueprints. And essentially what it is this will determine if we've actually collided with the opponent. Now, if you don't care if you've hit the opponent to be able to do a combo, then you don't need this boolean at all. But I think most fighting games, if not all, I don't know if I've ever played one without, require you to hit the opponent to initiate the combo, right? So there's moves you can chain together without hitting them, in which case you won't need to use this boolean. But I think for combos that are on hit, that's exactly what it means. So you need to damage the opponent first, and then you can trigger the next attack. Alright, so if you are interested in on-hit combos, and forgive me if there's a better term for that, I'm not familiar with it, just go ahead and make that variable, and go ahead and set it to false by default in the constructor. Okay, come down to, sorry, trying to find the, here it is, the take damage function. Once you're in your take damage function, you can simply set other player has landed hit to true. And the reason is, if you're taking damage, there's only two people in your game, right? There's only two people fighting each other. There's you and then your opponent. So if you're taking damage, your opponent has landed a hit. Now, there are some fighting games and sub-moves where you can take damage from your own move. Those are special cases. You could always do an if check to make sure you are not currently using that move, or you're not the one that's actually inflicting the damage to stop that. But I think this is a pretty surefire way. So if you're not familiar with the fighting game series, just make sure you check other player. Other player is simply a pointer to your opposing, to your opponent, right? That makes sense. If I could find him, he should be right here. That's all. And you probably should do an is valid check here, which you can just do if other player. I didn't, because if the other player is not valid, actually, you know what? Let's add it. Let's not take shortcuts, right? So if other player. There we go. And I'm not even going to build it because we don't really need those changes here for the purposes of this tutorial. But make sure you build, and then make sure you compile in here, or make sure you do a rebuild as always. Okay. Now, what we're going to do, the majority of the work is going to be here in the anim BP. In fact, all of it's going to be in the anim BP other than the things we actually do for the animations. So if you go into your animation blueprint, there are some notable changes that I want to make, or that I want to tell you guys about. But you can keep it, you don't need to do these ones necessarily. This is more a preference thing, but I did get some comments on how to remove this and how to fix it, so-and-so. Basically, what we're going to do is remove all these anim booleans that I had put in. They are not the best way, and I had mentioned that. Well, not that they're not the best way. They require a lot more work, right? Because every time you want to use a boolean from your code in your anim BP, we were making a new variable. or we were setting that variable and making it right here to use in the NMBP. Now this is really convenient because doing this ensures you don't have to keep track of these code variables in the state machine. So that part of it is good. You see I don't have it hooked up right now. So if you're following the tutorial, you probably have something similar to this. You can either remove it or unhook it. I'm going to keep it unhooked, but keep it in the project because there's a chance I might go back to it, and I'll show you why. There are some drawbacks to this new method. And the new method is we're going to strictly access this mutant character reference that we have and use that to determine all of our states to travel to and our animations to play and things like that. It does require us to actually get the reference every time, which is a bit annoying as opposed to just using this variable. But we do skip this entire section where we have to create these anim variables in the blueprint and then set them. So that's good. That's pretty good, and it'll cut down on confusion and extra dev work, tedious dev work. So the changes we're going to make that happen are, I'll show you here. What you're going to do when you go to a state machine. So say to go to your light attack. Before we were using was light attack, you used anim. Now what we're going to do is use our reference that we made in the last episode or 2 episodes ago. I don't quite remember when we actually made this. And then you're just going to get your was light attack used. Simple enough, right? We were essentially doing this anyway. We were grabbing this value to set the anim value. So you're saying, why weren't you doing this the whole time? This seems way easier and I didn't have to make variables. Well, there's a few drawbacks here. So we can do this perfectly fine, but there are cases here where we will need to use special things called notifications. Sorry. So you can see these transition events. What they do is, well, exactly what they sound like, right? So while this transition is occurring, so when it starts, when it ends, so when you're in this new state, or when it's interrupted, meaning another transition has taken priority, and that one is now the one that is occurring, you can call different anim notifies. So you're familiar with anim notifies if you've seen these in the animations that we've gone over before. So this is how we create our hitboxes and determine when the player can go back to idle. These are the same thing. These are also anim notifies. The reason we need to use these if we use the code variables is since we are setting these things in the state machine and in the NMBP, we're determining what attack to use based on the boolean that we set in the C++ file. See, we just set this boolean to true. Okay, so since we're just doing that, it's going to play this attack regardless of what we have set up, right? So, okay, light attack was true. So we're going to go in here. Great. That's perfect. And then I can play my attack. That's perfect. Now the issue here is with this other strategy we were using. We were setting an anim variable and then setting the code variable back to false. So as soon as this animation was done, we could set the anim variable back to false, and we know this animation from this boolean would only ever occur one time per input. And that is exactly what we wanted. Now that we don't have this logic and we can't determine, well, technically you can determine, but it's a lot more complicated, when your animation is ending in the code, and even more complicated, a very specific animation for each of your attacks is ending in the code. Now we have to kind of notify, which is what this is for, that we need to reset our booleans. So there's a bit more work on the state machine, and honestly, it's kind of annoying, I'm not going to lie to you, because you have to do this for all the states where you're returning. And even something else, all your states where you have directional inputs, like left, right, medium, if you don't want them to get into a weird state where you can play 2 at the same time, or sometimes one will play first and the other one with a higher priority order will play second, you're going to need to also have something to say you're starting the transition. That way you can know that you have already used the attack, and I don't want to play this other animation that also fits the criteria when we return to idle. And that probably sounds a bit confusing for now. I'll show you as we get into it. Sorry for that detour, but it's important to note that if you do decide to use this method, excuse me, if you do decide to use this method, there are a bit of changes you'll have to make. They're not necessarily worse changes, but they are things that you have to keep in mind, and they can make it kind of frustrating. So I'm not necessarily saying change this, but a few people asked me how to do this. This is how I would do it. I would remove the stuff we've done for the anim variables, delete your anim variables, and then use notifies when you change states to set these variables back. So in my notify, these are my notify start and end. They do the same thing. I set my booleans back to false, my code booleans, not my anim booleans. We're not using them anymore. And then I go through and I just delete my hitboxes. And the reason I delete my hitboxes is because I was deleting them when the attack ended, but now we're getting into combos and you can cancel your moves and things like that. So basically anywhere you can delete hitboxes when you know it's going to be safe to, you should really try to do that, in my opinion. There are some things I'm not doing too great here that I realized that they kind of just went over my head, so we'll get into that too. But again, apologize for the detour, but hopefully that answers your questions, and hopefully you understand where to go from here if you choose to use this method. So I haven't determined which method I want to use for the rest of the series, but that's how you do it, and there we go. On to the combos again after that detour. So for combos, what we're going to need to do is, in the state machine, we're just going to need to set up some way to implement a transition between the animations that we want to use in the combo. So my one combo is light attack to medium attack. So all you need to do, you don't need to go both ways on this one because we can only go from light attack to medium. If you have a combo that you could go to each attack from either starting point, then obviously do that. But all we have to do is make sure we can go from light attack to medium attack. That's our combo. And you can string together way more if you wanted to, but that's how we're going to start. So, just to note, last part about this, but just to note, if you do end up using this new method where you're not using these anim variables, and I'll delete them after this episode so it doesn't get confusing, but when you combo, you'll want to make sure you call, and I should call this start. That's just my fault. I copied and pasted and did not change it. You will want to make sure you combo, or you call these notifications during a combo. That way you won't, if you weren't to call this notification, if you didn't call it, it would end up going to medium attack, back to idle, and then your light attack boolean would still be true, so you'd go right into light attack again, and we don't want that. So you want to make sure you set these notifies to set your booleans back. Okay? Alright guys, so let's get into the real meat of it here. Light attack to medium attack. So if you go into the transition rule, there's 3 things we have set up. One of them is can combo, which I haven't talked about yet, and we're going to get into right now. And then the other 2 are things that we already have. One is our has landed hit, which we set up earlier in this episode, and was medium attack used, which is essentially our input. So normally how we do an attack, if you're familiar with it, is we just check if we've used an attack, and depending on the directional input we want, we might need to do this, we might not. For example, light attack I don't have directional inputs for, so all I need to do is check if light attack was used. Okay, so we need to still do that. Make sure while we're in this transition, first of all, sorry I'm clicking around so much. So we're in light attack, right? We use our light attack, that's this guy right here. We have a can combo anim notify. This can combo anim notify, what it will do is set the can combo boolean that we created to true. And what this means is at this point in the attack, so right around this frame, if we've collided with the opponent, so here's this active is when the active or the strike hitbox actually is created. So you could move it right on top of that if you want, but I just gave it some time so we could space it out and see what's going on. So once we hit this anim notify, if we've collided with the opponent and we press the next input required in the combo, then we should perform the next animation in the combo. Okay? So this is basically an indicator of when you can press the next input and actually go to the combo move. I think that part makes quite a bit of sense. The next combo move I used was this guy, I believe. No, I think it was actually this one. So, essentially, now that we've used our light attack, in our transition, make sure we can combo, so we've reached that point in the animation. We've used the next value, the next input required to do this next step in the combo, right? So if you're on Xbox and you have to press X and Y, this X was your first thing, your light attack. And then we've reached the point in the animation. We've pressed Y after that part in the animation was reached. So we've done the correct input. And our previous hit collided with the opponent. Then we can finally enter medium attack, which means we've successfully completed this combo. And then you can use this logic to literally combo as many, chain together as many combo steps as you want. So, just to show you exactly what's going on here. Give me 1 second, let me find it. So here we go. The anim notify can combo is what we set up in the animation. It is this one right here, can combo. Once it reaches that part in the animation, it's literally just going to set this boolean we made here. We didn't make it in the C++, I just made it in the blueprint, to true. You just hit the little plus variable here, make a boolean, can combo. You set it to true, meaning yes, we can currently combo. And then we will set it back to false at the end here when we reach attack ended, which is at the end of the attack. Because if we reach the end of the attack, then we did not combo in time. We did not do the steps required in time to perform a combo, so we should no longer be able to combo. I think that part makes sense. So, shout out to Fletch, by the way, popping up in the Discord. Thank you for all your support. So, okay. So, got a little bit off track there at the beginning, and I know I try to make these tutorials as easy as possible to understand. Combos are not that easy to understand conceptually, at least for me. So I have kind of a hard time explaining them, but I think that part makes sense. So, the last thing I want to go over before we finish up the combo steps here and make this actually fully functional is I made these into functions for a reason. So, if you are watching the series and you've been watching for a while, we have these attack started and attack active anim notifies that we've already set up, correct? So here we go. And what these did were they would create our proximity hitbox and our active or strike hitbox. Now, before I just had this chunk of code, so I have not changed what is in here other than I drag things from this because this is a function. I do this for a very specific reason. So, this strategy of using anim notifies is not that great. The strategy itself is good, but when you have a ton of attacks, like literally some fighting game characters have 60 plus attacks, probably more, but some of the ones I was looking at for the inspiration for this had 60 plus attacks, which is crazy, right? And that includes combos and things like that. However, when you're doing this, okay, you're going to want these to have different damages, different offsets, because the hitboxes are not always going to occur in the same spot, obviously. So you don't want to have this chunk of code for 60 attacks for one character. First of all, that's going to get insanely ugly. It's going to overwhelm your anim BP. So what I did is make it into a function. I'd recommend you do the same if you're going to have your characters with a bunch of attacks. So what we do is literally go up here, hit plus to create a function. I made one for proximity and active hitboxes. Go into your function. You'll just have this purple node to begin with. You can add to, you might have to compile first. Sometimes Unreal wants you to compile first. Make sure you compile. And then you can hit the little plus to add two inputs. I added type and offset. Okay. So you don't need type, honestly, because type is referring to proximity or active, and I made two functions for it, but this is how I set it up, so that's fine for now, honestly. But offset you'll definitely need, and for your active hitbox, you'll definitely need a damage one as well. So, again, same logic. I didn't change any code within here, except what I did is I take the variables that we added as inputs, and whatever you give them ends up going to the right places. So it's going to get a little bit messy here just because there's a ton of nodes going on, but the type that we give it, like active or proximity, sets the hitbox type, and that makes perfect sense. The damage we get it we give to the function sets the hitbox damage, and I think that makes perfect sense. The offset is the same thing, but it's a bit confusing for my tutorial specifically and my scene. You can see I'm actually using my Y and only adding this to my Y because I don't want to move it depth, like Z axis, right? And I don't want to modify it on my X-axis in Unreal, and it's kind of hard to tell because Unreal does not make it the friendliest, but you can tell by using the axis that you're looking at here in this little compass, or if you're on your main menu, it will show you what direction is what. For me, it is Y, so I only want to apply the Y offset to the Y values of these. So that's what this is. But essentially, this is the same code. I have not changed anything. I just changed, instead of hard coding these values, we set up a function that we can call anytime we want and set the damage. This will be way easier for 60 attacks than trying to hard code all those different nodes 60 times over, right? We can just call this function, give it what we care about. So I think these are important to mention. Feel free to make them. If you don't feel it's necessary, that's perfectly fine. But I think it was worth taking the time to explain it. Okay, now that we have these, we have attack started and attack active, we have can combo, and we have our new thing, has landed hit. So, alright, that was a mouthful. So, now that when our attack ends, we want to make sure we can't combo anymore, correct? But we also want to make sure that our last hit has not landed. And it doesn't mean that we actually did miss our last hit. More so what it means is actually that we have not landed a hit at a time where we need to be in a spot to combo, right? And this is important because even though it's basically the same as can combo in terms of the concept behind it, it's not the same thing because can combo just means we're at a state in the animation where we can combo. However, has landed hit means we've actually met the collision condition to be able to combo. So the two different things, set them both back to false. That way, when the attack is ended, that way you return to idle and you have to start the process all over again. Then I just go into my normal hitbox clearing stuff. I do want to add a note. I am doing something very bad here. So I'm looping through these hitboxes, destroying the actor, and then clearing the array, which should only occur when you've completed it. So if you've been following me, I apologize that I led you astray. You should remove that part of it and just go to clear the array once it has been completed. So go from here and don't have anything else on the for each loop. And I also do that in the create active hitbox right here. So I'm going to do the same thing. All right, so now if we go into it, we'll look at everything one step at a time. So I can do my light attack, good to go. I can do my medium attack, good to go. All right, I can do my directional attack. I can do my forward directional like this, back directional like that. And don't worry, we assume we won't be able to move when we're doing combos, so it won't look as ugly. But the important part is that we can do directional attacks. They all function on their own. Regular attacks function on their own. I can't combo when I've not collided, so I can just mash this button and instantly go into the next attack after. However, again, if I hit this person, you see I can actually cancel before I even return to idle and use the next move. So I can only do this if I've collided with the opponent. And then it does damage both times because when the animation plays, it gets the anim notifies that create the hitboxes. We're good to go there. Yeah, I think that's it in terms of explaining how it works and also fixing all my mistakes in the past that I did here. But there you go, guys. So if you do that, you can actually now have combo moves that work. All you need to do is add this part in the code just to say that you have that the opponent has landed a hit on you when you're taking damage. That way they can combo you. And yeah, that's it in the code. And in the blueprint, you can make the anim changes if you need, but these are not required. And you can also clean up the code a bit and not be a savage like me, but these are also not required. The only thing you need to do to make your combos actually work is go into your state machine, make sure these variables are set correctly from the first attack to the combo, or the next step in the combo, so the second attack in the combo, and then make sure that there's a transition from one to the other. Okay? Feel free to do all this stuff that I told you about as well. So there you go, guys. I know that was kind of a convoluted episode, to be honest. I had a hard time kind of putting it all together and keeping it all in my head for a way that was easy enough to explain, because this is one of those things for me that always kind of threw me off. It takes me a bit longer to actually understand what I'm trying to achieve within combos, because there's so many special conditions. So there you go, guys. That's how that would be done. That's how I would do it. It's actually a bit better of a way than we did it on Fury Strike. So there you go. We have combos. We have directional inputs. You can chain them together very easily, by the way. Directional inputs and combos. All you need to do is, if you wanted to chain them together, and sorry, I lost where I was. If you wanted to chain them together, just go from medium attack to your directional attack, medium left. That's my little naming scheme there. That's what that means. You could just chain these together, add a transition, do the same things you did for the first one, but then also add, dang it, I'm going to delete this because I don't necessarily want to do that, but then also add this check. So you'd have a four-way and, where you have was medium attack used, can combo, has landed hit, and directional input equals, and then the direction that you want to be facing, or you want them to be pressing, essentially, to trigger that. Okay, so I get that was a lot. So if you have any questions, please join the Discord. I'll be happy to help you. We have a wonderful, wonderful community of 75 plus members right now. And a lot of them are willing to help as well. So it's not just me. So if I'm ever gone, they can help you out. And we can send pictures and videos there. If you don't have Discord or you're not comfortable joining, that's perfectly fine. You're in no way obligated. However, you can still post in the YouTube comments. We won't be able to post pictures and videos back and forth to each other. The conversation will be a bit slower, but I'm happy to answer there. So feel free to just comment down below. If this tutorial helped you or you're interested in seeing more of this series, you can also leave a comment below about what episode you'd like to see next, and subscribe to the channel. It helps more than anything else you can do right now. So if you're interested and you want to let me know that you're interested, then there you go. Just subscribe, let me know what you want to see, and I will get on it very soon. Yeah, that's about it, guys. If you want to see me do things other than this programming stuff that I do, which is pretty cool stuff, if I do say so myself, you can come check me out on Shawnthebro27 on Twitch. We play a bunch of stuff over there. We've been playing Apex Legends, Darwin Project, and Resident Evil 2. The Resident Evil 2 ones are incredibly fun. We actually just recently beat the 4th Survivor on pretty much the worst run possible. So it's a ton of fun, guys. But yeah, if you want to come see and support me there, I'd appreciate it. But again, most importantly, if you just like this content and you want to see more, please subscribe, join the Discord, ask any questions you have. Most important things. Anyway, guys, I'm going to shut up now because I've been talking for about a half hour. But thank you so much for watching this video. There will be a new fighting game episode up every Sunday. And I've started a new thing where every Wednesday I will continue the other series I have been working on. So you'll see an episode every Wednesday on a different series. And the fighting game will be every Sunday. So thanks again, guys. I'm Shawnthebro, and I'll see you in the next one.